All right, Mr. Tim O'Donnell, welcome to the Freedom Fries Real Estate Podcast. Spiros and I are really excited for this episode where it's such an honor and a privilege to have you here talking with us. So without further ado, we'll stop talking. And Tim, can you just tell the people a little bit about yourself and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be on here with you both. Had some awesome nights with Spiros, so it's good to talk shop a little bit with you guys. But yeah, I'm a 2003 grad from the United States Naval Academy. Had service selected EOD, got pulled into a quasi world-class athlete program when I was a JO, and that kind of brought me to my triathlon career. Raced Ironman triathlons, just finishing up my career, 20 plus years of racing. Had some success. Absolutely love it, and yeah, it's just been pretty amazing. I joke with some of my other triathlon buddies that we got to live our retirement up front. And now I'm figuring out what else I can do with my life.
He's being a little modest to our listeners when he says, "Yeah, I've had a little bit of success, also known as world champion."
I'm just excited because we've had a rash of West Point graduates on this podcast recently.
I knew that was coming.
and then some Air Force guys, which totally off script, I guess. But
man, so your listener numbers must be low without it. With
I know. So I feel comfortable and happy about today because I feel like the Freedom Fries podcast has come home. You know what I'm saying?
So whatever you have to tell yourself to make yourself feel better, Spiros.
So Tim, world-class athlete program. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's not typically what we hear, right? We usually hear, "Hey, I graduated from an academy or have a military background and I did this or that." So tell our listeners a little bit about what that means exactly.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, actually. I mean, my older brother, Thomas, he's still in the Navy. He's Commodore Subgroup 12 out in Groton. And Nice. He jokes that I had the best naval career of anybody he's known. But so, yeah, the Army, they have an actual properly structured world-class athlete program out in Colorado Springs, attached to the Olympic Training Center in Fort Carson. Air Force has done a lot of it well, particularly with modern pentathlon. And Navy, it was kind of a little bit ad hoc. I graduated, and then I did the IJEP, Immediate Graduate Education Program, and ended up going to Cal Berkeley for 2 years to get my master's of ocean engineering.
Okay.
And while I was there, I caught the eye of Navy sports, and I had won the Armed Forces National Championship, Triathlon Championship, the 2 years that I was racing while I was at Berkeley. And it just so happened that I sent kind of this proposal to the head of Navy sports in Millington, and at the Navy personnel office, and the Commodore of EOD Group 1 was walking by his office door while he was like literally opening this up in the mail. And he's like, "Commodore," he's like, "come check this out." So all of a sudden, the EOD guys are like, "Heck yeah, this is the type of person we want representing us in the Navy out to a wider audience." And they said, "All right, Tim, we're going to kind of work with you on TAD orders to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs." I had already qualified to be a part of USA's triathlon's national team. So I was kind of starting to race at that highest level of Olympic distance racing, trying to make the Olympics. And I just had this awesome opportunity to represent the Navy, the Armed Forces in the United States on international scale of triathlon.
That's incredible. So cool. That's so cool that there's a program like that. And what's even cooler is it sounds like the Army and the Air Force kind of have this program a little bit more dialed in. But on the Navy side, you just said, "Hey, program's not there. I'm going to go and make this program happen, or at least make it happen for me." Right. That's pretty cool.
It was almost willing it. And, I've had great successes in triathlon, but I really think the most impressive thing I ever did was figure out how to get the Navy to let me race.
That's right. That's awesome.
But oh man, I remember I was at the academy. I was like looking up different like regs and stuff and trying to find like, all right, how do I pitch this? How do I make this work? And I was just fortunate that I had really supportive people in the EOD special operations community that, saw value in it.
I've been there before, just like miscellaneous, things in life and looking at different laws and regulations and codes. And like, I think there's a loophole here. I can find, I can get my foot in the door this way or that way. So sometimes in life, it just takes that little bit of effort, putting yourself out there, and who knows, things might happen.
Yeah,
But it
absolutely.
also sounds like you had, even in the military, you kind of had a network, right? That said,
Yeah.
"Hey, we're going to support this guy. We're gonna team up with him and help him achieve his goals," right? Which
Yep.
is a lot what we talk about on this podcast, right? And I know I'm stealing this from someone, but your net worth is your network, or your
Hmm.
network
Absolutely.
is your net
Spiros.
worth.
And
Um,
that honestly, that started when I was at the academy, and I had incredible advocates with. I was on the club triathlon team, and
yeah,
the OREPs. We had two amazing Marine Corps officers that were our OREPs, and they were advocating to get me to to the Olympic Training Center for
Wow.
developmental camps for the national team while I was at the
Wow.
academy.
That's crazy.
I mean, you're right. Having good people around you, and then guys like Scott Jones, retired admiral, who was in the triathlon community, and Jim Felty, one of the coaches for Navy Triathlon. He had these guys that really just believed in me, and it was pretty special to have that support from people and the network.
that's awesome. I'll tell you, I've had the opportunity, the good fortune to spend a couple of evenings at different events with Tim, and you're not going to find, for a world class athlete, for a guy who's got medals,
Hmm.
to prove it. You'll never find a more humble, friendly, supportive dude. Very cool. So I kind of want to shift gears a little bit, Tim, to sort of your entrepreneurial
Hmm.
um, uh, aspirations, or I
Hmm.
would even say your accomplishments so far. So tell us a little bit about some of the things that you're working on outside of your racing career, whether it be real estate or otherwise.
Yeah, I got a lot of irons in the fire, so to speak, in terms of what do I want to do next.
Yeah.
And several years ago, I really got it. I did get into real estate. I had it's something that always interested me. I remember when I was training in Colorado Springs, at the end of my rides, I'd be riding around town looking at properties
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
things like that. And we bought my wife's from Australia, and we bought a property there in 2018.
Also a
That
world class athlete.
Yes, she's
By
actually the
the
real. When
way,
it comes to athletics, she's yeah. I just
It
sit
runs in
and
the family.
bow down to her. She's a legend. But yeah, we bought a place there, and I tried to run it myself. Just disaster. International property management. I do not
Uh,
recommend it.
that's tough.
So I realized, I'm like, okay, there's a lot of potential here, and we live in Boulder, and we've made everything we bought in Boulder. Appreciation's been insane. So I kind
Hmm.
of realized the value there, and that's when I linked up with Buddy Rushing and White Feather Investments. I think it was the beginning of 2019, and that really opened my eyes to all the real estate stuff, and was able to link up with a former training partner on the national team with me, Brian Fleischman, who lives in Colorado Springs, and we've done a ton of investing, kind of on the Front Range, and expanded to a nice little portfolio. But on top of that, I'm looking at getting into public speaking, and starting to write a book here soon too. So I've had a unique career, a lot of crazy stuff happened to me while I was racing triathlon, and I just want to share my story to a wider audience.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So what is it? So you said I'm looking at starting to write a book here pretty soon. What can Mike and I do
Yeah.
to motivate you to write that first word? What does it take, man?
No, I do have a game plan. I'm going to work with a mentor on kind of shaping my story here for the next 2 weeks. But we had a baby too. We have an 8-week old baby, our number
Oh
3.
man,
So it's
congratulations.
been
That's awesome.
thanks. It's been full on. My wife just retired as well from racing. So we got 2 people looking to do new careers and a little baby, and we're definitely sleep deprived right now.
Well, I have a 4-year-old and a 6-month-old, Tim. So I know your pain, and I do not envy you. I'm happy I'm over that bridge, but it's still it's still tough sometimes. So Tim, tell us a little bit about your real estate and kind of how you got involved in it. I know you mentioned buddy rushing, which I think
Yeah.
is a common thread for all of us. But was there anything specific you were looking for in real estate? I know you mentioned some international, which is definitely a different take. That's
Yeah.
definitely going for it all up front. But yeah, let's talk about that a little bit if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I mean, through Buddy and White Feather, I just kind of like, it's like throwing spaghetti on a wall, see what sticks.
Yeah,
I've tried everything, small multifamily, single family, syndications,
cool.
all over the board. But what I really landed on was, the most success I think I've had is the stuff we've been doing in Colorado with my buddy Brian. I think we're up to maybe just under 30 doors. And everything we've been able to do is kind of off market, below value. So we've been able to just leverage properties, refinance, awesome, pull money out and buy other properties. We did a deal last year. We were able to buy a package of 4 duplexes, got under contract for $1 million, and appraised at 1.3. We had just bought another duplex, cash into a refi. Yeah. And all the equity pulled out of that, we used to put into the very little money we needed to buy those other 8 units, because we got, we only had to put 10% down with the valuation we had. So, all of a sudden we're turning old properties into new properties with no cash out of our pocket, which is pretty awesome.
Tim, you're telling me it's possible to be a world-class athlete, train almost every single day, and still have time to buy real estate and be a successful real estate investor? That's impossible. You can't do that.
If you have great friends that you work with, you can. And I think that's really been my success. Yeah. Because then I even, I said to Buddy and the guys at the beginning, I need to be pretty hands-off, because if you're trying to win world titles, you're trying to be the best in the world at anything, right, it's hard to all your energy, all your focus needs to be in that one direction.
Sure.
And luckily with Brian, I had someone that's on the ground, making things happen. And you can obviously play your role. It's not just money, but it's just like, hey, thinking about big things, like, why not? Why can't we do this? Why can't we leverage that? And if you have someone that can then take action and really do the day-to-day stuff for you, that's where you can have a lot of success.
So off-market versus on-market deals is something that we've talked about in previous episodes. So it sounds like you said a lot of your stuff is off-market deals. How are you and your partner finding those deals? Is that an internal kind of effort, or do you have somebody external that's kind of highlighting the targets for you? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's funny, Spiros. That's something that Brian and I have had internal conversations in the last couple of weeks about. All right, what's the next step? Because right now it's all been on our side. Now Brian's a realtor. He just makes connections. He hustles. I mean, we've even had our tenants come and say, "Hey, my mother, needs to move out. Or do you want to buy this house?" So, just really developing that those local connections and networks has been really powerful.
Nice. That's awesome. How did you, Tim, if you don't mind me asking, how did you find Brian, and how did you make that connection, or, come to the determination that you guys were compatible to be, business partners together? Because I know, personally speaking, and a lot of people, out there listening, they struggle with that. They might have friends, or they might have, acquaintances, but being a friend and acquaintance is a lot different than, putting money together with somebody. So I'm curious to how you approach that.
You definitely, you want to find someone you trust. And I think within the world of veterans, there's an automatic first level that you reach.
Right.
I mean, you still have to do your due diligence, obviously. And luckily, Brian and I used to room together when we were traveling across the world. So, we know each other pretty well. But you have to start the conversation too. And I remember, Brian, we bought like a $8,000 lot in Pueblo just for fun. And because we were like, we could just buy that. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I started the course, and I remember we had a couple of properties where we put offers in, but Brian's a little hesitant. He doesn't want to spend $5,000 too much. We missed a couple really good deals in Colorado Springs. And at that point, I'm going through the course with Buddy. So I have Brian, who knows he wants to take action, has the ability to find properties, but maybe doesn't quite have that risk tolerance or that confidence that, hey, we can make this work. So I think that's where I really played a big role in the relationship. I said, hey, Brian, we just missed, we didn't want to pay $435 for this, property in Colorado Springs. We only wanted to pay $430. Well, the guy that bought it for $435 just turned around and sold it for $550. I'm like, that's it. If the numbers make sense, the numbers make sense. Like, let's go. And I think I was kind of almost be able to be that cheerleader, be like, hey, this makes sense. Look at it this way here. And together, it's been a really great combination.
So if two partners are agreeing on everything, that could be dangerous, right?
Right.
I mean, if you both agree, if everybody's like,
that's a good point. That's a really good
in
point.
the same direction and always agreeing on everything, that might be a dangerous setup, right?
Yeah.
You may end up missing out on opportunities, or you may end up, holding each other's hand to certain doom, right?
Right.
So,
yes, you're right.
Yeah.
So it kind of sounds like, Tim, you and your partner are maybe a little bit opposite. You have different risk tolerances. You have different purviews on stuff, and then that makes for a good setup, right? That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yep.
Different
lenses.
Going off of what Tim said, it might not even, so one person might be busy, or they don't have the same amount of time that, they can devote to looking at deals, analyzing deals. But having that person to go back to at the end of the day and saying, hey, Tim, listen, I found these 3 deals. Here are the numbers. What do you think, man? Like, am I going crazy, or right. Does this look all right to you? That is worth more than any money in the world, to have the confidence and trust in somebody that is going to have your back and can evaluate deals with you. So not everything needs to be 50-50 in the sense of time, but that communication is vital. I mean,
absolutely.
At least in my mind.
You really have to respect and understand what your partner's doing too, and make sure you don't take advantage of them. Like, for example, Brian's our property manager, and he's putting a lot of work into this, and I'm like, Brian, we got to pay you. You have to be paid. And he's like, no, I want to stabilize the properties. Well, and okay, but once the property is stabilized, I'm like, Brian, no, you're taking 10%, right? Like, you're doing way too much work. This right now, this is not 50-50.
That's awesome.
And so I think if you can make sure there's that mutual respect too, that'll help the relationship, partnership grow.
That's so awesome, man. I mean, I don't even know this guy, and I can already tell he's a home run and just really just all over it. So, Tim, I want to backtrack a little bit. So, obviously, it takes a ton of grit and determination and desire and all those buzzwords to be at the level of the athlete that you are, right? So, if you could, I don't know, maybe just touch upon a little bit. Like, give us some insight onto what you've endured, how you've gotten to the level you've reached, and how you see those principles and those traits transfer over into the business, real estate, entrepreneur, public speaking aspect of your career.
Yeah, I mean, I look back. I started swimming when I was 5 years old. I started swimming year round on like a club team when I was 8 or 9. So I've been pretty invested in the sporting world. But, my family jokes, I was the worst athlete in my family. I mean, I wouldn't qualify for the championship meets. So I'd have to lug like the lawn chairs for my siblings. I'm the youngest of 4.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm the punching bag, right? So I'm like, like grabbing towels or whatever they need. And, but I loved swimming, and I loved working hard. And then when I got into triathlon, it was the same thing. I was a hot mess. I mean, I was crashing left and right. I didn't know how to run. But I looked at it as, okay, what do I have to do? Right. I love doing this. Let's focus and let's prioritize it. And to be honest, I could have had a lot more fun when I was at the academy when I did. And I know it's not easy to have fun at the academies, but you definitely can. But I was so focused on what I want to do. I'm like, okay, I want to, I don't know how, but I want to race triathlon professionally.
Right.
Okay. Well, obviously I got to train really hard and I got to focus on that. But, we mentioned earlier, how do you actually make that happen? So, I got to get to grad school. All right. Well, I better be in the top 5 or 10% of my class to do that. All right. That's the new thing. We're going to do it. Yep. And then, better figure out how to work with the Navy on that. So I think knowing what you want is really important. Being willing to put the time in the work and finding the right people around you. I had coaches that I would have never been able to do this without the people around me that I had, coaches, officer reps, as I mentioned, all that stuff. And then being able to believe in yourself enough that you push through when you're not succeeding. I mean, I was having all these breakthroughs particularly in my run training when I was, trying to make the Olympics, and then I was trying to move up to the Ironman distance racing. And it wasn't evident in my race results. I was not performing, but I knew, hey, this takes time. I have a plan. I have, I have a run plan. I have a run coach that has helped me, and I know I can do this. So I'm going to believe in myself. And when I got out of the Navy at the end of 2008, I just missed making the Olympic team by a couple spots. And I had no sponsors. I wasn't making any prize money. And my parents thought I was crazy, right? Here you go. Like, you're leaving, you got a job, you got health care, you get a pension if you want to stay in. Like, I was in a comfortable spot. And I said, no, I know I can do this. Moved to Boulder. I said, I got this much money to last me a year and a half. Like, you got to go. And it wasn't long after I won my first Ironman, half Ironman. A couple months later, broke the course record from the reigning Ironman world champion.
Freaking awesome.
Like, okay, see, I told you guys. I told you I can do this.
That's freaking awesome.
I
That's
am
such
not
a good
carrying
feeling.
the lawn chairs anymore.
Yeah, take that. That's so cool, man. That must have been just a fantastic feeling at first, not only to win, but just to break a record at the same time. Just like, hey, my hard work is paying off. Like, this is it. Like, this is go time now.
Yep. And it wasn't just like, just one more thought on that, Spiros.
Yeah.
Because end that race, it was in St. Croix. I actually met my wife there too, by the way. So, like, this is the best day ever, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
I joke with her that I had to win a race for her to talk to. But in the race, even when you're fully prepared, there's always adversity. Things are going to go wrong. And I remember we were coming down this crazy descent, and the guy in front of me ran off the road. It was a sharp, like, 90-degree turn. And I'm following that line down this, like, bomber of a hill. And I'm like, oh no, I'm going into that barbed wire fence too. And I still go off the road. I'm in the grass, but I managed to save it and not go into the fence. But I lost the front group, and I'm like, there's my race. Like, I can't win now. But then you say, okay, well, let's stop thinking about that. Let's think about the process. Right. I'm not going to think about winning. I'm going to think about, how do I perform the best, and what do I do in this very moment for me to do that? So when you focus on the process and the moment that you're in instead of the result you want, that's how you win. That's how you get there.
Can we bottle that up and put it in a message and broadcast that out? I mean, no, but Tim, seriously, man, that's, I don't want to use cliches, but that's how you're successful in life, right? Myself included. I think people get wrapped up in, okay, or, in any aspect of life. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to do it tomorrow. I just want to do it. There's no process. Or I want to be financially free. I want that to be done this month. I'd like to retire, but they don't look at the process. Insert anything, any goal that somebody wants to achieve. So it's really important. I've been reading books and listening to books to just kind of take a step back and do those little daily habits that you change those habits, those things that become habits, and that's how you become successful day after day, after grind after grind, and that's where the magic happens. And it's hard for the average person to conceptualize that, but I know I've been trying to do it myself. Just like every day, wake up. I've been waking up at 3:30, go to the gym, wake up, do it every day. It's a habit. Yep. Just make it happen. Look at deals every night, do it. It's non-negotiable. Do it, and that's where the changes happen. So that really spot on, man. I love that. That's really cool.
You're absolutely right, Mike. And the hardest thing is, once you get into that rhythm, you're fine. It's just taking that step and making that decision that you're going to do that.
100%.
So, Tim, you brought up a couple of things that I want to kind of piece together. You brought up about you had good coaches. You had a good support system. In this network of people that the three of us are all involved in, there's this aspect of, sort of professional coaching and life coaching and executive coaching. And I'll be honest with you. I'm like one of these guys that's a non-believer. Like,
I am too.
I don't get it. So it sounds like it sounds like you're a guy that has done all the work. You've put in all the work. You've managed to harness the discipline, but you have on multiple points today mentioned your coaches and the people that were coaching you. Can you talk about how coaches sort of play a part in the life of a world-class champion like yourself? And then kind of tie that to, I want to be a world-class real estate champion or an entrepreneur champion or whatever it is I decide I want to be the best in the world at. Help me become a believer in this idea of coaching.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think coaches play different roles for different people.
Okay.
And, sometimes people just need someone for accountability to get them off the couch. But in my experience, at a high performance level, it's not about that. You have people that are motivated, self-motivated, driven, but they need a sounding board. They need someone to tell them when to hit the throttle, when to pull back, because it's not and this isn't just sports. You can't just be full throttle in everything. There has to be discipline, a structure, a plan, and sometimes patience, right? Like Mike said, you can't be,
right.
You can't retire off of, 1 week of being like, all right, I'm going to do this. Now it's done. Right. It's just not like that. And it's not always about just what that person knows. A lot of times like, oh, coach, like, do they really know more than me, or what am I going to learn from them? And a lot of times you think you just need to experience it for yourself. But if they can communicate well with you, I think that's the most important part. It's not necessarily even the knowledge base. It's just that relationship that you build with them, that trust. And, I know I could tell my coaches anything. I know they listen. I think that's really important. A lot of times coaches will just speak down to somebody, particularly if they don't have confidence in themselves as a coach, that they know what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, I just, I can't see doing it without that support. And
nice.
And the pressure. I have friends that have been self-coached, and there's enough to think about, right? But imagine always worrying, like, am I doing the right thing right now?
It's a fair point.
That's the questioning yourself and your decisions. That's tiring, and that can lead to burnout for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the knowledge aspect, Tim, because I'm in the same camp as Spiros. Whenever I think about a coach, I'm not in a conceited way in any way, right? But I'm always, my first thought process or my first reaction is like, oh, like that person doesn't know, like how much more do they know than me, or like what can they really contribute to me, or what can they tell me that I can't figure out on my own? But I've never really looked at it in the way that you've explained it, where it's just the trust aspect and the ability to have someone to speak to. That's powerful. Like there's a lot of times where you might be engaging in something and just having that simple phone call or that text message or that ability to bounce an idea off somebody, whether it's a coach, a friend, a business partner, that goes a long way. And that can, that could be the difference of somebody doing, in the context of real estate, diving into a really bad deal where you lose a lot of money, or getting out of a bad deal where you don't purchase it because that person was able to walk you off the ledge, so to say.
Yeah. And even I'm kind of with the my foray into public speaking here. I'm have a mentor that I will start working with here shortly.
Nice.
And he's risen quickly, right? It's only a year. I'm like, well, how much does he know in a year?
Right.
Well, it doesn't matter. Like he obviously knows how to do it, but he's going to help me just start, right? Like he's going to help me take that first step and just polish. And if you just have to listen and ask questions too, because there's always nuggets to, they may say something they don't even know is going to have an impact on you, and you just pick it up. I have that with triathletes that I coach right now. I'll say something and then they'll email me like later that day, like, wow, like that kind of blew me away. And I'm like, wait, what did?
Like
for me,
I said what?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So in the interest of giving you, I'm sure you've done a ton of podcasts, right? But giving you another rep in telling your story, I do want to kind of focus back on your personal experience. I was super inspired and intrigued by your kind of personal story of what happened to you during a race. So, if you could take a few minutes and just kind of tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are. And I'd like everyone to sort of treat it as a bit of a commercial, because when this guy's book comes out, you're going to want to buy it, because his story is nothing more than otherworldly. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely had a very scary moment in my racing career, and I'll just preface it with 2019. I had my greatest performance at the Ironman World Championship, first American to break only American to be at sub 8 hours in Kona, and runner-up finish. Just an amazing day.
Awesome.
And pandemic hit, slowed us down. My first race back, beginning of 2021, was in Miami. And I was racing the guy that won. So this was, I had won Kona in 19. So this was kind of a big race. And I've been having issues in my chest earlier, like breathing and stuff, and had gone to see doctors. They said I was okay. And I got in the race, crushed myself in the swim, was right up there with Jan, the defending Ironman world champion, and a couple other 2 or 3 other guys. Exactly where I wanted to be in the front of the race on the bike. And, I'm pushing over 300 watts, going almost 30 miles an hour. And I just start to feel the spreading pain shoot across my chest and my left jaw locked up. I started getting that tingling feeling running up my left arm. And I'm in the heat of the moment, and I know this isn't a normal race pain that I would feel, but Jan's right up the road. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
So I actually thought to myself, is this a heart attack? And, and then I thought, there's no way I could be pushing, 300 plus watts and be having a heart attack. So I'm just going to back it off a little bit, see how I feel. But the races kept getting harder and harder. It was on the speedway, the Homestead Speedway, the NASCAR track. And it's like 17 laps on the bike. I actually got off my bike a lap early because I was so out of it. And they're yelling me, get back on. I'm like, oh, okay, get back on. Coming in transition, hit the run. Still had like an 11-mile run to go. And I'm just like mad at myself. My son, my second child, Finn, was 8 weeks old at the time. And I'm like, I got to get some diaper money, prize money's 10 deep.
That's
I'm
funny.
in 11th place right now. I got to pay the bills,
That's great.
And I'm just like mad at myself. Then I'm like, why is it so hard to breathe? And I'm just crushing myself. Get across the line and still try to rally. Don't feel right. And then finally I couldn't even stand up. And I just told the race director, hey, like, I don't feel right. Called my wife. She's like, you need to call our doctor. Called Dr. Dave, told him what was happening. He said, Tim, you need to take aspirin right now and go to the emergency room.
Wow.
And I did that. And turns out I was having a heart attack, had a heart attack during the race, almost complete blockage of my LAD. At one point in the race, they said it was completely blocked. And even the doctor in Miami, even the cardiologist was like, oh, like, you're not the happiest, like you're the like most cheerful patient we've ever seen in here. They're like, there's no way you're having a heart attack. This is probably just dehydration or whatever.
Right.
And then they went in, operated, and like, wow, yeah, you
Holy
had
cow.
You had a widowmaker heart attack, as they call it. About I think 12% survival rate from that.
What?
Wow, man.
Holy cow.
Hey, we're just blessed to have you on the
Thanks,
podcast today. But
oh man,
so tell everybody that you had shared with me that they actually kind of surmised that because of your world-class training, you had grown. Tell us about that a little bit.
So, honestly, my fitness helped save my life. With all the training I'd done over the years, in the requirement for so much blood flow from, your elevated heart rate for, 30, 40 hours a week of training, I had started to develop these little ancillary vessels that came off of my arteries, and that helped divert blood around the blockage to keep me going.
Wow. That's incredible,
insane, man. That's a story that should be in a book. So rightfully so that you're writing it up. What did that look after, Tim? Did that end your career, or were you able to still race after that?
Well, yeah, it was crazy. Actually, literally, they said, we're just going to go take a quick peek inside, and then, sure, you're fine. 30 minutes later, or whatever it is, they're in there a long time. I feel them like moving around.
Oh my God.
In my chest.
That's crazy.
The first thing the doctor said was to me, well, I guess you'll have to find a new career.
Whoa.
And
man.
the head nurse was this kind of like big, like stocky, bald-headed guy. And he started yelling at the doc. And the head nurse had worked at Boulder Community Hospital. And he's like, you don't know what you're talking about, doc. These guys from Boulder are so fit. He'll be out, back at it in no time. He's like, don't worry, Tim. So
that's awesome.
It was this really hard point, like in my life, you almost died, right? So you have to deal with that whole like facing mortality issue, which
right.
My gosh,
one of the fittest guys in the world, it never crosses your mind, right? Like how can I be having a heart attack?
Yeah, you're like, oh, that can happen to everybody who doesn't work out, not me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not. I'm Superman, right? Not the case, right? And I mentioned, Spiros has heard me say this before, but fitness isn't health, and I think that's really an important takeaway. So I had this, mortality, issue facing me, but then also, hey, I may be out of a job. My career might be over. So
Right.
it was a really difficult time. Luckily, I had great support from my wife and family. But I found the best specialists in the world, and I said, my wife Irini and I had a conversation. Hey, if they say I can go back to racing, I'll do it, but I'm not going to jeopardize my health, and the jeopardize our kids having a dad down the line to do a sport of triathlon. I've hit great heights. If I had to stop racing, I would have been very happy with my career at that point.
Right.
But almost for me, it wasn't even about results anymore. It was just about being able to come back and, not letting that heart attack stop me.
Sure.
And, I got back to training. It was hard. Honestly, mentally, it was the hardest part.
No.
Should I be doing this? Am I going to keel over on the side of the road?
Right.
At one point I was on blood thinners. So I was taking, rolls of duct tape with me in case I got in an accident, and you're going to bleed a lot. Right. So I'm, I'd be ready to wrap up any wounds, and aspirin with me in case something happened. So it just really shifted my perspective, but I was able to work through it, and I'm really glad I did, because not just for me, it's had a tremendous impact on those in our sport. And I get, emails every week about people saying I've helped them, thank you so much for coming back. It's, I've had something similar, and now I have the, the courage to keep being fit. And that's, the doctors told me, hey, fitness is not a bad thing. Working out is not a bad thing.
Right.
Even after the heart attack, you need to do that to prevent, further cardiovascular issues.
Man,
interesting.
A true inspiration. If you're not inspired after that story, no matter what it is in life, whether you're a runner, real estate, whatever your thing is, freaking awesome, Tim. That's really cool, man. I appreciate you sharing us with that. That's awesome.
And I was able to get back to the finish line one more time at the Ironman World Championship, which was awesome.
That's so cool. That's
a really
so cool.
special moment for me.
Man, I can't thank you enough for sharing that with us and our listeners. That's such a cool story. And, it's cool because you persevered and you overcame, which is what everybody's trying to do in life. So, I have a really odd question. As we close this out, right? I just want you've had such a fantastic career, right? World champion, Ironman, world record breaking. When somebody asks you, what is your number one accomplishment in the sport? What's your answer? What do you say? What's your go-to thing?
Probably that race and the 2019 Ironman World Championship, getting that American record at the Ironman World Championship was pretty awesome.
And nice. Tell us.
I had broken my foot 7 weeks before the race. Cool. I didn't run. I didn't run going into the race. I couldn't run.
Oh my god! And how many? Listen, I don't know anything about triathlon. I've listened to David Goggins' book a little bit, so I know all that and whatnot. So, how many miles do you have to run to beat that record? Or how many miles did you run?
So the Ironman triathlon is it's a 2.4 mile swim and then a 112 mile bike, and then you end that with a marathon, 26.2 mile run.
So you didn't run
by the way, the ground temperature in Hawaii is like 130 degrees in the lava rock.
Dude, I can't run 2 miles outside without passing out. You ran 26 miles without running before the race. Come on, man. That's freaking awesome.
I had my fastest run split ever.
That's awesome.
You can't make it up. You can't make it up.
Well, this has been a true pleasure.
Man.
Huge inspiration.
Freaking awesome.
And I'll tell you, if it helps spurn you on to progress, we can't wait for your story to come out. And
same here, man.
And because I think there's a lot of things here, right? It's a story about perseverance. It's a story about not the winning part, but the getting knocked down and getting up, like the process that you were talking about. Yep. I mean, these are all things that people need to hear about. So I know from Mike and I, for sure, man, you got to do this. This is what you were put here for.
Absolutely.
People need to hear this story, and I think you're gonna touch a lot of people. So I'm very much looking forward to
guys. I just want to add one more thing. We get knocked down, like you said, come back. It's okay. It's okay to change your goals, your goalposts, right? When I came back from the heart attack, my mindset shift was completely different. I wasn't necessarily about winning an Ironman world title anymore.
Right.
And don't be afraid to, as you evolve as a person or something happens to you, to make those shifts and change your focus.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's great. I mean, that's
Spot on.
That's your second book right there. You know, changing your goals.
No, I mean, it's a fair point, because people get so wrapped up on that, the shiny object syndrome, where I have to get that one thing, and the minute there's a bump in the road, there, the whole mission is done. So being able to be flexible and adjusting based on the trials and tribulations that you observe throughout the process is super important. So
Mike,
spot on, Tim.
I think we probably just had our first New York Times bestseller on the podcast.
I mean,
in the future. We don't know it yet, but it's going to happen.
We got to do the radio voice for that, Spiros. You've heard it here first on the Freedom Fries Real Estate Podcast, Mr. Tim O'Donnell. Tim, listen, man, freaking awesome. Can't thank you enough. This was fantastic. This is an open invitation. Anytime you want to come on this podcast, and if it helps at all with the public speaking endeavors, and you want to get some practice, we'll throw out 4, 5, 6, 7 straight episodes of just talking to Tim on here. I don't care. So
perfect.
This is awesome. All right, this was awesome.
Man. When the book comes out, I'll be back on.
Sounds good,
awesome.
brother.
All right,
appreciate
Tim,
your time,
you.
man.
Cheers.